a mysterious notebook which grants the power to kill. Death Note. Outside the grounds of his high school, Light Yagami discovers a notebook that claims to be able to kill anyone whose name and face is known to its owner. He initially dismisses the so-called Death Note as a hoax, but after testing its powers, he discovers that these claims are indeed real. The original owner, a Shinigami named Ryuk, approaches Light and explains that the notebook now belongs to him. Since Light is the new owner, he is the only one who can see and interact with Ryuk. The Shinigami also says that when Light's time to die comes, Ryuk will be the one to write down his name in his book. Light decides to use the Death Note's power to rid the world of evil and become the god of a new, peaceful world. As criminals begin dying from inexplicable heart attacks left and right, Interpol convenes to discuss the phenomenon. Unable to come up with an explanation for it, they turn to the world's top-ranked Detective L, whose true identity is a well-kept secret. L speaks to the Interpol representatives through a computer and an electronic voice, promising them that they are dealing with mass murder and that he will soon confront the killer whom the general public has been calling Kira. This displeases Light, who has been going to great lengths to keep the Death Note hidden, since learning that Ryuk becomes visible to any who touches the book. L tricks Light into revealing that Kira lives in Japan's Kanto region through a fake television broadcast. Having played right into L's hands, an enraged and humiliated Light swears to eliminate L. Police authorities discuss the Kira case with L. Upon inquiring about the time of death of the victims, L concludes that Kira is likely a student with a naive concept of justice. He requests data on how the victims were publicized and begins to suspect that Kira has access to police information. Because the police officer in charge of the Kira case, Light Yagami, is Light's father, Light can monitor the authorities' movements. Meanwhile, Ryuk tells Light that he is being followed. He also explains that not only do Shinigami get the lifespans of people they have taken before their time, their eyes can see everyone's name and lifespan floating above their heads. He gives Light the option to trade half his remaining lifespan for the eyes of a Shinigami just like Ryuk's. Light tells Ryuk that he is trying to create an ideal world where no criminals are left unpunished, and that, as the god of such a world, he cannot sacrifice half of his life for the Shinigami eyes. Light begins experimenting to find out how much control he has over how a criminal dies. He tries to have prisoners escape or draw L's face before they die. When they fail to do so, he learns that the Death Note is not all-powerful. Using this knowledge, Light devises a plan to find out who has been following him. Light has a drug dealer touch the Death Note and makes him hijack a bus before he dies. During the hijacking, Light gets his tracker to reveal that he is Ray Pember, a federal agent from the United States employed by L and his associate Watari. Light waits 1 week before killing Ray Pember. He follows Ray onto a train and forces him to write down the names of his fellow agents on a piece of the Death Note by threatening Ray's family. Because of the simultaneous death of these 12 FBI agents in Japan, the police are scared to continue investigating, and the American president pulls the FBI off the Kira case. However, Pember's fiancé, a former FBI agent, seeks to find Kira for revenge. Light has another criminal leave a third coded note for L which finishes with the phrase, "L, do you know, gods of death love apples?" Although there is truth to this, L determines that Kira is only mocking him as he considers his next move. In an effort to repair his relations with the Japanese police, L meets in secret with the remaining detectives who want to work on the Kira case. L insists that they use false identities for protection against Kira and asks that they call him Yuzaki instead of L. He reveals his thoughts about who Kira might be following the murders of the FBI agents and pinpoints who the federal agents were tracking during that period. Meanwhile, Light happens to meet a woman who introduces herself as Maki. As the two talk, he realizes that she is Pember's fiancée and that she has worked out that Kira can kill by means other than heart attacks. Convinced that it is his destiny to use the Death Note to create a better world, Light is euphoric that he has come into contact with the very person who can get him caught. He formulates a plan to get rid of her. Light writes the name Maki on the Death Note. When nothing happens, he realizes that Pember's fiancée has kept an alias and fears that she may lead the police to him. Ryuk starts pressuring Light to get the Shinigami eyes, but Light coaxes her true name, Naomi Masora, out of her by pretending to work for L as the Death Note takes effect. Light informs her that he is Kira and watches as Naomi walks away to commit suicide, tauntingly yelling after her how he could easily contact his father now. with her only feebly returning that she has nothing to say. Meanwhile, Watari reveals his identity in the meeting with Light's father and the other detectives. He gives the detectives special gadgets embedded in clothing in the event Kira comes into contact with them, or they are in trouble. Detective Shuichi Aizawa is sent to the police headquarters by L and just misses Penber's fiancé. L is close to discovering the identity of Kira. Misora's disappearance causes L to shortlist the people who were being tracked by the FBI at the time of Ray Penber's death. He requests surveillance equipment to be installed in the homes of those he suspects, including Soakawa Yagami's son. Light, however, becomes aware that he is being watched and has the Shinigami locate all the cameras in his room. Later, he deceives the surveillance team by watching the news on a portable television hidden in a bag of potato chips and continues to kill the criminals being reported. This throws off L's suspicions that he is Kira. L's suspicions are momentarily subdued, but he does not discard the possibility that Light may be Kira and decides to meet him in person. At the college entrance exams, Light notices a mysterious and eccentric student staring at him, who introduces himself as Heiki Ryuga, the same name as a famous idol. Light is shocked to realize that it is L, since it would be too suspicious for L to die right after meeting Light. He decides to befriend L and kill him at a later time. He decides that the best course of action is to get closer to L, gather more information about his true identity, and keep an eye on the police. In a bid to profile Light's behavior, L challenges him to a game of tennis. L asks him some questions regarding the Kira case and invites him to help in the investigation. The two then receive news that Soakawa Yagami has had a heart attack and is in the hospital. Light promises to his father that he will make sure Kira is caught and executed for making him suffer. On the way out, L confronts and scrutinizes Light, still uncertain whether or not he is Kira. Light attempts a bluff and demands to be placed in a prison cell without television for 1 month to prove his innocence. L is satisfied but curious that Light should offer this proposition. Meanwhile, television station Sakura TV receives audio tapes from an anonymous person claiming to be Kira. The Kira investigation team is discussing the disappearance of Naomi Misora when Watari interrupts their meeting. Sakura TV is broadcasting an audio tape, which is allegedly from Kira. To prevent Kira from gaining public support, L demands that the broadcast be stopped. Hirokazu Yukita, one of the investigators working with L, rushes to Sakura TV but mysteriously dies in front of the station. The investigation team realizes that Kira no longer needs to know the person's name to kill and panics. Light, who is watching the broadcast from his room, concludes that he should involve himself in the Kira investigation to gather intelligence on L and the second Kira, whom he correctly infers has already accepted the Shinigami ideal. Meanwhile, L suspects that the person behind the broadcast must be a different Kira from the one they are chasing. Light meets with L and the detectives. Meaning to test Light's analytical skills, L has him listen to the recordings confiscated by the team to determine if there are any clues in the reader's voice. In this way, L concludes that Light cannot be Kira. The team then broadcasts a recording made by L and Light to trick the second Kira, Misa Amain, into replying. Misa unwittingly reveals important details about the properties of the Death Note and Shinigami when she responds and Light begins to panic. In her reply, Misa demands that the first Kira meet her in person. Shocked and wanting to pursue this lead, the investigation team formulates a plan, while Light decides what to do. Detective Tada Matsuda and Light volunteer to go to Aoyama to investigate on the date mentioned in the journal entry. Light intends to find out who the second Kira is, and in order to keep his identity unknown to the Shinigami following Mise, he gets a group of his friends to surround them while they walk. Possessing the Shinigami eyes, however, Misa finds out that Kira is Light Yagami because his lifespan is the only one she can't see. Later, Misa confirms to the investigation team that she has found the real Kira. The team decides to change their approach and try to reason with her. They release a television broadcast condemning Kira as a heartless murderer who will kill anyone who discovers his identity. Furthermore, they offer to lessen the severity of the punishment the second Kira will face if she reveals information about the real Kira. Misa ignores this, finds Light and explains that she tracked him down because she loves him. After Light introduces Misa to Ryuk, the two discuss their plans to get rid of L taking advantage of the situation and of Misa's love for him. Light concludes that he can use her to mislead L, while furthering his plans for a better world. Misei's Shinigami. Rem, however, threatens to write down Light's name in her own death note if Misei's safety is compromised. In the meantime, L is thrown off the trail by the second Kira and is confused by the new audio tapes, purposely denouncing the police's attempt to make the first Kira appear as a pariah. L concludes that the two Kiras might have met and are working toward the same goal. Worried at the prospect that he might be murdered, as he is convinced the two Kiras had met, L demands that in the event of his death, Light should be arrested. Later, Light and L meet each other outside college. Much to the anger and frustration of Light, Misa appears and converses with the two. Minutes after Misa leaves, Light receives the news from L that she has been arrested on grounds of being the second Kira. Misa appears to be blindfolded and tied to a chair, while L instructs Watari to torture her to obtain information. A few days later, Misa relinquishes ownership of her death note, thus erasing her memories of its existence. Light decides to tell L that he thinks that he may be Kira subconsciously and wishes to be confined. Light's father also believes it is a good idea that he himself be confined to a cell, as he cannot risk his emotions getting the better of him in this investigation. Light concocts a plan whereby he tells Ryuk he will relinquish ownership of the death note at any time in a discreet discussion. While being monitored by L after Light's imprisonment, Kira's execution stop and L's suspicion is heightened. Light chooses this time to give up the death note, ensuring he will lose his memories of being Kira. His change in behavior puzzles Light goes from being calm to completely desperate. The Kira executions then resume, and the new spate of killings confuses L. In a last bid to determine if Light and Misa are the two Kiras, L and Soakairo stage a stunt in which Light's father attempts to kill Light and then himself out of shame. Seeing Light and Misei's reactions to it, L intervenes and announces that he no longer suspects them of being Kira, although he is still suspicious over the fact that Misei's DNA was found on the audio tapes. Misa is released, but Light continues working on the Kira case. L and Watari move the investigation team's headquarters to a new building inside the city. Elsewhere, Rem speaks to a mysterious businessman about the Death Note. 8 businessmen then plan the next murder Kira will commit in order for the Yotsuba group to excel in the market. L proposes that he be tied to Light, causing a scuffle to break out in the new headquarters. It is some time until Kira begins killing again, which has L and Light thinking that Kira may be killing for monetary profit. Their suspicions lead them to the Yotsuba group, a rich organization that dominates global markets. Kira is also reported to have been sending threats to politicians, and the investigation team is forced to conduct their operations in secret. As far as the public is concerned, the Kira investigation remains unsolved and the team is disbanded. At this point, L brings 2 new members to the investigation team, Aber and Weddy. Feeling inferior at his lack of participation in the Kira case, Matsuda decides to snoop around the Yotsuba group and do his own research. He finds evidence that Kira is in the building, but before he can act, he is apprehended by the 8 businessmen. Using the fake identity card Watari gave him, he passes himself off as Misei's manager. He pretends to offer a deal involving her in their commercial campaign, while contacting L using his modified belt buckle, following L's instructions. He then fakes his own death. In one of the group's later meetings, one of its members chooses to leave out of fear he may have to face the consequences of Kira's actions. The investigation team installs wiretaps and surveillance cameras to monitor the Yotsuba group meetings and are amazed at how openly they discuss their use of Kira. Light and L come up with a plan to contact one of the members of the group, Ryuji Namikawa. Namikawa agrees to act as a spy and helps postpone Kira's killings by discussing them at the meetings. L reveals that he still suspects Light is the first Kira by playing mind games with him. Afterward, L questions Misa and wants her to infiltrate the Yotsuba group to obtain information. Soakairo worries that even if they do gather enough information on the group, it will be difficult to capture all of its members at the same time. The third Kira sets his eyes on Misa after meeting her. While Misa is taking a break from a meeting with the Yotsuba group, Rem contacts her. Misa is able to see the Shinigami, but her memories of being the second Kira do not return upon touching a portion of the Death Note that Rem has brought her. Rem then tells Misa about everything that has happened and that she must trust Light lest she be killed. Upon re-entering the room, she spots who the third Kira must be, Kyosu Kiguchi. Misa goes on a date with him and is able to obtain proof that Kiguchi is the criminal L is looking for. Her ease at determining who Kira is leaves L very suspicious, since he could not deduce it himself. After learning that Higuchi is Kira, L decides that the police must not apprehend him until they understand his killing method. He points out that this will be an advantage in curing society of Kira and proving that he has been caught. He arranges for Sakura TV to air a Kira special, where Matsuda will declare he knows the identity of Kira to lure out Higuchi. Having been granted immunity from prosecution, several of the businessmen trick Higuchi and lead him to follow L's plan. As the third Kira races to the television station, determined to kill the whistleblower, L and the investigation team watches every move via cameras and wiretaps. While driving to Sakura TV, Higuchi talks with Rem about his situation. L, Light, and Misa watch from the investigation team building and wonder who he is talking to. L wonders if Higuchi is talking to a Shinigami. Rem convinces Higuchi to go to the station, but she has her own selfish motives for doing so. Higuchi enters the station's offices and writes Matsuda's fake name in his death note. The team thinks he has just written a note to himself, but find his subsequent erratic behavior odd. L argues that Higuchi has attempted to use his killing method. Higuchi then makes a deal with Rem to obtain Shinigami eyes. A furious pursuit ensues when L realizes Higuchi can kill after looking at a person's face and orders the police to apprehend him. Higuchi is arrested on grounds of being Kira and causing multiple murders in the region of Kanto. Inspecting Higuchi's death note, L discovers that Shinigami do exist. While L is stunned, Light takes the death note from him and remembers that he is the original Kira. Light then kills Higuchi by writing his name on a scrap of the death note. It is revealed that when Light gave away his death note, he added a fake rule stating that after having written in the book, its owner must continue to use it at least once every 13 days or perish. The investigation team reviews the rules written in the book and finds that they can do little to get rid of them. Meanwhile, Light orders Misa to recover the other death note he had hidden a few months earlier. Misa makes a second deal with Ryuk for the Shinigami eyes in order to find out L's true identity. L asks Rem about death notes, but she reveals as little information as possible to avoid implicating Light or Mise. Meanwhile, Misa begins to use her death note to kill criminals. Although Light denies Mise's involvement, L becomes suspicious of her and Rem realizes that it was Light's plan all along to endanger Misa, so that Rem would sacrifice herself to kill L later. Light finds L on the roof of the investigation team headquarters. The latter laments how distant he is from other people and how often they, like most people, lie. When the two rejoin the rest of the team, L reveals that he is planning on testing the 13-day rule, the only thing currently absolving Mise. Before he can do so, however, Rem kills Watari and L, and herself in the process. After secretly snatching away Rem's notebook, Light celebrates his victory in silence. Thank you so much for watching. Part 2 will be out fairly soon. Do like and subscribe to our channel for more interesting animes like this.